Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for GMs.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
And a big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for making the work we do here on YouTube possible. But for today, we are diving back into our tier ranking every cantrip in D&D 5e, and we are picking up where we left off with Infestation and continuing all the way to Resistance today.
If you look up on the screen right now, you're going to see the criteria that we use to rank the cantrips. In short, an S-tier cantrip is one that everybody who has access to it should take, and some classes might even consider picking up the Magic Initiate feat to grab it. An A-tier cantrip is one that everybody who has access to it should take, and a B-tier cantrip is one that might be good for certain builds, while a C-tier cantrip might be good in niche situations, and a D-tier cantrip probably shouldn't be on your radar. This is part 2 of 3 for our cantrip tier ranking videos, and at the end of the third video, we're going to show the complete lists of how everything stacked up. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
So picking things up with Infestation, this is a damage-dealing cantrip that is available for druids, sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. You pick a target within 30 feet, they have to make a constitution saving throw. If they fail, they take 1d6 poison damage and get moved in a random direction. And if they're blocked, they don't move, and they don't provoke opportunity attacks from this movement.
I like the flavor of this cantrip, but generally I think it's pretty weak. First of all, poison is a pretty well-resisted damage type. 1d6 is not the most damage you can get out of a cantrip. The movement is random, which actually means that although there is a somewhat battlefield control element to this, you're not really in control of where the target moves. So you can't do cool things like push them into an area of effect or off a cliff. You're kind of looking at a chance that that might happen. So I also don't like that it doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. That would actually make it more interesting if they moved away from your fighter and your fighter got to hit them with a sword while they ran around screaming because bugs were on them. That would be neat, but it doesn't do that. So I actually think that there are a lot of negatives on this cantrip, and I'm not overly impressed, although I love the idea of it. I wish that it performed better, and I want to give this a C ranking.
Completely agreed. You roll a d4 to determine what direction the target moves in, which means that if your target is directly beside a wall of fire or a pit or the thing that you want them to fall into, there's at best a 25% chance that they're going to end up in that, assuming they fail their saving throw. So the chances of them actually ending up where you wanted them to be are pretty low. Con save is one of the most highest saving throws for, so it's really not what we're looking for in a cantrip. And once again, poison damage is so commonly resisted as well. All of these things combined, I think this is borderline D tier. It's just not good. Every possible way that it could have been good, it doesn't have.
Honestly, if it allowed opportunity attacks, I would raise it up a rank.
If it allowed opportunity attacks, it would be amazing, because then you'd have a much higher chance of that going off, depending on the positioning. But even then, it might be too strong then, which would be weird. For me, it's C-, borderline D.
The next cantrip that we have is Light. This cantrip is pretty straightforward. You can touch an object and make it light up. And it sheds bright light for 20 feet and dim light for an additional 20 feet. It lasts an hour. It uses an action. And if you do target a creature who doesn't want to light up, then they get to make a dexterity saving throw. Generally speaking, though, I don't use this on targets. I guess it could be cool if you happen to see an invisible target and you can cause them to glow. But generally speaking, this is the wizard's torch. Rather than carrying torches around, you have the light cantrip, you're good to go. This is Gandalf in the Mines of Moria lighting up his staff and flashlighting them through. I think it's an extremely useful cantrip. I think that the utility is great if you don't have dark vision and you need a cantrip to help you see in all the places that are hard to see. Take light, it'll be good for you.
If you happen to be playing a character that doesn't have dark vision, light is worth taking. And so for that, I give it a B. It does have some interesting other uses in the fact that you can basically use it like a torch. You can light up an object and then drop it to illuminate a distance. You can use it as some kind of marker or signal flare if you are creative with how it works. There's a lot that you can do creatively with the light spell because it is a heatless, flameless light source. It does mean that, of course, anything that you do with this spell, you could potentially do with a lit torch or a lantern in some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't really offer you anything that you couldn't do anyways, aside from the fact that, yeah, you don't have to carry that torch to get its light around. So I think it's a B. It's one of those ones that it's like a really like fifth pick B. You know what I mean? Like, you either take it because you need it, or you're just going to leave it to be that, I've got like 6 cantrips, I guess I could take light.
I will agree with the B ranking. I will say, though, that the light cantrip can do things that torches can't do, like go in water. And I do think that there are a lot of creative uses for this. So although it isn't my first, second, or third pick for a cantrip, I think that there are a lot of useful applications here. And I do think that it's worth looking at.
Far from useless, it's just that you probably have dark vision already, and maybe you've also brought some torches, so you can kind of hope that the dark vision and the torches kind of carry the gap.
The next cantrip we have is Lightning Lure. This is available for the Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, and Artificer. It is a evocation cantrip that allows you to target a creature within 15 feet of you. You lash out with a rope of lightning and pull them towards you. They have to make a strength saving throw. If they end up 5 feet away from you, then they take damage. The damage for this is 1d8. It goes up as you level up. Personally, I think that this is not going to be a primary pick for a lot of the sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, and artificers out there. However, it might be useful for blade singers or hexblade warlocks who want to damage a target, pull them in towards them, and now they're in melee range. But even then, you are using your action to pull them towards you when you also could have used your movement to run up to them and then hit them with your primary attack. If you have an area of effect that you're in, it could be useful, but then again, that's a pretty niche thing. I think that if you were a cleric with spirit guardians and you pulled them in, that would be cool, but this isn't available to the clerics who have spirit guardians. So for those reasons, I'm on the fence on whether this is C or D tier. I think that there are some redeeming qualities. There are some mildly useful possibilities here. So I want to say C. What do you think?
I think it's almost a D as well. This is an example of a cantrip that has a very similar competitor available to a different range of classes, in that Lightning Lure is very similar to Thorn Whip. However, Lightning Lure has a much shorter range. It relies on a saving throw as opposed to an attack roll. And it's really only going to be situationally useful for those very few characters like Hexblades and Blade Singers and certain Artificer builds that it's not even about the movement thing. You use Lightning Lure because you used your movement for the turn. You didn't end up adjacent to an enemy, but you want to pull that enemy adjacent to you so that they can't get away from you, and then you can hopefully make an opportunity attack against them. Or hopefully you were able to use it to pull them into that damaging AoE that's surrounding you. But once again, it's hard to get those kind of combos happening with the right classes. It's weird because I love Thorn Whip, and this spell is very similar to Thorn Whip, but it just has enough deficiencies to it that I don't like it as much. I think you could do similar things with it, but for me, it's basically a D. I think that I'm gonna I'll say C, because I think that you could build a character that makes it work, but you're really, really scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
I feel that, and I do think that if you didn't have to end with the target adjacent to you in order to deliver damage, if it just did the damage, I think that there would be better plays here, because then you could lightning lure them into area of effects.
Yeah, I think I've seen something along the lines of trying to use Cloud of Daggers and using Cloud of Daggers to lightning lure someone into the Cloud of Daggers. And I guess maybe there's a build there that makes that work. That's the only case, but it's not. This is not going to redeem that cantrip.
It's convoluted.
Yeah. So next up, we come to Mage Hand. This is an awesome little cantrip. Mage Hand creates a spectral floating hand that is going to go out and let you telekinetically sort of manipulate things. Mage Hand offers so much utility and so many varying applications, largely in part because oftentimes dungeon masters can be very permissive with what they allow Mage Hand to do. And so, while I want to give Mage Hand a very high ranking, and I'm going to, I want to give it the caveat that Mage Hand is not like having a remotely operated version of your own physical hand at a distance. And so there are things that the Mage Hand cannot do. Most notably, the hand can't attack. And a lot of people often get confused over Mage Hand because they wonder, oh, could the Mage Hand grab somebody? Could the Mage Hand tie someone's shoelaces? Could the Mage Hand hurt someone in some sort of creative way? And my response to that is, if you weren't using Mage Hand and you were just doing that as your character, would that be an attack? And if the answer is yes, Mage Hand can't do that.
It gets into a tricky situation. I've even used Mage Hand to drop a torch on a troll. Didn't do any damage, but it had fire, and we ruled that, yes, sure, that's allowed. But those are the tricky situations that you can get into with Mage Hand. The Mage Hand can't lift, push, or pull anything more than 10 pounds. So it can't hold open a closing gate or anything of that sort. It can't hurt anybody. That being said, though, this is one of the most creative cantrips out there, and I think that it is S tier. If you have the option of taking Mage Hand, this is one of the primary picks.
Absolutely. The ability to just manipulate an object at range, whether that is pushing a door closed, or tripping a lever, or grabbing that potion across the room, or snatching the MacGuffin out of anything, or pressing a button, all those things that your hand can do at range, a lot of them it can do. You just have to draw the line at anything that you would count as an attack if a character would do it. And obviously, it can't activate magic items either. So Mage Hand is an S tier cantrip. Just don't let it be above S tier by letting it be too much more than that. That's where people get into trouble with it, because oftentimes you get those ridiculous scenarios of like, can I use Mage Hand to grab someone's heart through their body, or can I use Mage Hand to again, you do get into that area of like, what happens if the Mage Hand drops a 10-pound object from a very great height? Well, its range is only 30 feet. So again, think about those things carefully.
I will say, though, if you're trying to decide between Find Traps or Mage Hand is better at discovering traps than any other spell out there. If you're worried that a lever is going to trigger something, or you're worried about sticking your hand in a hole, Mage Hand.
Next up, we've got Magic Stone. This is a little bit of a weird spell in that it basically turns regular stones into magical sling bullets that you can then throw at people or shoot with them. In a weird way, it's kind of like the shillelagh of ranged attacks. And for that reason, it's pretty decent, because when you attack with the magic stones and other people can pick them up and attack with them, it uses your spellcasting ability modifier instead of whatever the basic modifier was.
I actually think that this is an underrated cantrip. It's by no means the best cantrip, but nobody really talks about it. And there's two things that I like a lot here. First of all, I love a thematic spell. And this has a lot of thematic elements to it. But I love a thematic spell that delivers on that theme and actually performs at the table. And this does that. I picture that there's a lot of halflings out there with slings who this would be a great spell to have your little rocks and you whip them at your enemies as your primary attack. It doesn't do as much damage as Eldritch Blast, no. But slinging little rocks around, I mean, if we imagine that the Ewoks in Star Wars had magical rocks, that explains how one hit on the head killed a stormtrooper. But That's kind of a theme. There's always the little creatures throwing rocks at their enemies, and this actually gives a means to have throwing rocks at your enemies actually do enough damage to take them out.
This is actually surprising as a cantrip because it does 1d6 damage plus your spellcasting ability modifier. So that little 1d6 gets a bonus to it, which is unique amongst many cantrips, which you don't often get the bonus as well. And one of the other cool things about this is that it's available to druids, warlocks, and artificers, which means that you can basically get any spellcasting ability modifier you want with it. So you could, in a really weird way, I'm actually imagining a arcane trickster rogue that grabs this spell through magic initiate that whips rocks and sneak attacks with them as a halfling. Like there's actually a thing there that could work.
I also want to point out that this cantrip is a bonus action, and you imbue 3 rocks with it as a bonus action. So you don't even need to use the cantrip every turn to use your attack. You can stockpile a few rounds and then use your sling as your main action to hurl rocks. I want to say that this is an A tier cantrip.
I actually think it's surprisingly good. I'm going to give it a B myself because I do think it does depend, but it's a pretty decent pick for a druid that wants a ranged alternative to Shillelagh, and a lot of druids love Shillelagh already. So if you don't want to have to run up and hit someone with your stick and would rather throw rocks at them, which once again just conjures wonderful mental images, consider taking Magic Stone instead of Shillelagh.
Next up we have Mending, which is a cantrip available to almost everybody, and this allows you to take a small break or tear in an object and fix it. Can't be more than 1 foot in any dimension, and it can't fix magical items. But generally speaking, if something's broken, you can probably fix it.
Bear in mind that it does have a 1-minute casting time, and it will only repair tears. It can't replace missing components of a broken object. You still need all those pieces there to put them back together again.
If you have half of a broken key, you can't mend it to fix it, but if you have both halves of the broken key, you can put it back together again. I do think that this is a really useful cantrip, although somewhat niche, not the most niche, but
once again it falls into that, I wish I could take Mending. It's also one of those cantrips that in real life, this would be an S tier cantrip.
Yes. I could make millions by just having the Mending cantrip.
1 minute to fix the screen of your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 minute to just fix that annoying little screw that got stripped or any other problem in life. It's S tier in real life, but in D&D it feels like one of those things that doesn't come up in adventuring situations.
I want to give this a B tier. And here's why it gets a B tier from me. It doesn't come up a lot in D&D campaigns, but it can actually break entire encounters.
It can break settings.
It can break settings.
Like when you actually think about the implications for a spell like Mending existing in a world, like think of just things like shoe repair. You start thinking about all of those things in life that would change if you could just wave your hand for a minute and something gets fixed. So it's weird because it's one of those spells that is innocuous. Player characters don't often take it, but then it actually causes weird questions if you think about if it's super common in the world.
I also want to say that in an adventuring day, you could run into cases where the DM did not consider that the player has Mending. There could be the example of you find the key, but it's broken in half. Well, I cast Mending. Oh, guess you can open the door. Well, you come to a rope bridge, but one of the ropes has snapped and the bridge hangs loosely. You pick up that rope, you mend, and now you can cross the bridge. There are times that the DM may not account for how much of an impact a spell like Mending can have, and that's why it gets the B tier.
I agree. Continuing on the theme of B tier spells that are cool, I wish I could take them more often, but often don't. Message is another really cool little spell that essentially allows you to whisper to somebody at a distance. So you point at a target, you send them a message, and they can reply in kind. Interestingly enough, this spell actually doesn't specify how long the message is supposed to be, but I imagine that, like sending, it should be about 25 words or less. And interestingly, you can send it through walls as long as you know the target is exactly on the other side. So it's not quite telepathy because it's an action, but it's useful.
This again falls into that B tier category. I think that we're in the same boat as Mending, where is this going to be useful all the time? No. Is it relatively niche? Yes. But is it niche enough that it's a bad idea to take it? No. Is it possibly going to come up? Are there going to be moments in your campaign where you realize, oh man, if I had message right now, this would solve a lot of problems?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. So it's not really anybody's first choice. But a wizard who has this pact in their arsenal can solve a lot of problems that you don't expect. One of the biggest things that happens in D&D, and a lot of DMs might not account for this, or depending on how the DM runs things at their table, communication during battle. Trying to relay plans when you're being stealthy. How does the DM play that out? Well, you guys are talking and the guards are in the next room, so they hear you talking. Some DMs rule it that way, some don't. But if you do have a DM that's ruling it that way, message fixes communication while you're trying to be stealthy, while you're on the battlefield, trying to relay messages 120 feet at any point. If you have two people on either end of the castle and you're going to scale the walls to ambush the enemies inside, we've done ambushes before where it would be really helpful to be able to communicate 120 feet to all the people who are in place for this ambush.
Yeah. The one action casting time does make it a little bit difficult to use in combat, but it does help with coordination for things like ambushes, and it's interesting to use it in a social situation as well. How many times have you been in a social encounter with the Dungeon Master's core NPC, and the players are trying to say things to each other, but they can't without the NPC hearing? Message is a cool way around that, although the pointing at each other might raise a little bit of suspicion. I think that message would be way more useful if it was a bonus action. I also think that it would be way more useful if it wasn't as pointed, and it would be way more useful if there weren't so many ways to get telepathy now. So its stock has really decreased, but it still does a cool thing.
Next up, we have Mind Sliver. This is a relatively new cantrip that was introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It has a range of 60 feet. It requires an intelligence saving throw from the target, and if they fail, they take 1d6 psychic damage. And the next time they have to make a saving throw, they subtract 1d4 from that saving throw. It's available for sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. I especially like this for the sorcerer because there is a great use of using Mind Sliver and then quickening a spell that requires a saving throw. By doing so, you've now set yourself up with your own 1-2 punch so that you can subtract 1d4 from whatever saving throw you're about to drop on them, and you got a little bit of extra damage in there. Generally, I think it's a great pickup for anybody, but especially sorcerers.
Yeah, I think it's also really cool to use Mind Sliver for a concentration spell that requires a saving throw to escape. So, for example, if you're able to ensnare a target within a hold person or a hold monster spell, on subsequent turns, you can just blast them with Mind Sliver, and as long as they continue failing their intelligence saving throws, you're going to be debuffing that much more important saving throw that they have to make against escaping the effect. It's not perfectly reliable, but intelligence saving throws are generally some of monsters' worst saves across the board, at least or at least if they're not the spellcastery type, and even then, they might not be. So you can usually reliably count on a monster's intelligence saving throw being not great. 1d4 is a pretty reasonable thing. I think it works best with the sorcerer that can quicken it, and then combine it with other meta magic to get even more out of it. But I do think that it is a really great cantrip for any character that's going to focus on battlefield control, and the fact that it's available to sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards who all enjoy that battlefield control playstyle, I think makes it a great pick. I think I'm going to give it an A+. I don't think it's S tier because it does require some setup and some thought, but it's really good.
I agree. It's definitely an A tier cantrip. Everybody who has access to it should consider it. It's not one that you might go very far out of your way to get, but definitely worth looking at.
Next up, we come to the classic illusionist cantrip, Minor Illusion. This spell allows you to create an auditory or a visual illusion. Your choice when you cast the spell. As a sound, it can be anything from a scream to a whisper. However, if you create an image, it can be no larger than a 5-foot cube, and it must be an immobile object. Furthermore, there are no stipulations in Minor Illusion that allow you to modify or change or move the image once it's created. And furthermore, it can't be an illusion of a creature. So while you cannot use it to make distraction halflings, you can use it for a variety of really, really interesting applications, such as masking a 5-foot pit, or creating a little box for you or a set of bushes for you to hide in, or creating an image of the villain that you are trying to hunt down to show what the local townsfolk, what the bad guy looks like, or anything else that you can imagine. It's a very flexible illusion spell. It just has some very specific limitations.
I think that this falls into a similar category to Mage Hand, where I'm going to give this S tier. I think that Minor Illusion is one of the best and most creative cantrips out there. But similarly to Mage Hand, pay attention to the limitations. Some DMs will allow you to get away with more than what this cantrip is capable of, which pushes it above S tier. But even with the limitations, there's a million creative ways that you can use this cantrip, and taking it allows you to think on the spot that if you need to conjure up an image of something, if there's some way that a 5-foot image is going to save the day, and this actually does come up quite a bit, then you have a tool to use it for. And really, the sky is the limit on how far you can go with this cantrip under the limitations, but using your imagination. A 5-foot by 5-foot box is actually a pretty big space, and you can do a lot with that. There are some doorways, mind you, they're pretty small doorways, but I mean, if you're in a goblin cave or something, you can probably conceal an entrance. Concealing pits, concealing items.
The most common mishap that I see with Minor Illusion is usually a player character trying to create the illusion of a living creature to be some kind of distraction for their enemies to aid stealth. And all I'll say to that is, you don't need to make a living bait person to bait another creature. You can create something that looks like a piece of treasure, or a bunch of coins, or a really delicious looking pie, or perhaps even the MacGuffin that the villains are after. Or even you could just make the floating words, "You are a jerk," floating in the air, and that's going to distract and confuse people to some extent. Go wild with the messages that you can write in graffiti with Minor Illusion. They might distract somebody. So in any case, as long as you're not making things that move, and you're not making things that look like creatures, you're pretty much in the clear with Minor Illusion.
Next up, we have Mold Earth. We've already talked about similar cantrips with Gust and Control Flame. This is the one that targets Earth. Similarly, it has a list of options that you can do to the Earth in front of you. It needs to be loose earth or rubble, but you can move the earth or rubble 5 feet, creating a bit of a ditch. You can create shapes or words in the stone or dirt, and you can make non-difficult terrain into difficult terrain, or difficult terrain into non-difficult terrain in a 5-foot square. This one does fall into, in my opinion, the useful category. More useful than Control Flames, maybe not as good as Gust, but I do think that Mold Earth has a lot of really valuable applications. The ability to just create a difficult terrain area is pretty cool, but I actually really like the ability to create shapes and words on the stone or the earth. I have this cantrip in our campaign, and I've used that in place of the way you might use Message.
Yeah.
Where during a battle, I'm able to twiddle my fingers and make words appear in front of my ally who the enemy has their back to send a message on what's going on. I have also used the excavation piece to get us out of situations, dig our way through a tunnel or through a blocked door. There's a lot of times that earth being in the way can be solved very easily if you have this cantrip. Getting under a wall, or even if you're trying to infiltrate a castle with enough time, if nobody's paying attention, excavating just a little tunnel underneath the wall is possible with this cantrip.
As long as you're not going to hit solid rock or clay in the process, because it can only excavate loose earth, which, if you're asking me, I would define as basically soil. And so by the time, you're not going to use this to replace dwarven mining and engineering by any stretch. As soon as you're hitting something that, for me, is as soon as you hit clay, I think that's when it's no longer loose earth. And that might not be very deep at all. I think, if you think about if you've ever dug a hole or a pit or worse, you hit clay pretty quick, depending on where you are and what you're digging out. So, and obviously you're not going to use it to dig through constructed stone objects or the foundations of buildings. So you might not be able to get into the castle because you might hit the stone foundation that you can't dig through.
This isn't pass wall.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so as long as you're cognizant of the limitations of the spell, it's awesome. I think it's a solid B.
I give it a B+. Next up, we have Poison Spray. This, you spray poison in the face of somebody who's within 10 feet of you. It does 1d12 damage versus a con save. So, again, we run into a situation where this I actually have some good things to say and some not good things to say. First of all, 1d12 damage, thumbs up, love it. But again, we're dealing with poison and con saves. These are tricky elements to be playing with.
And the 10-foot range really, really hurts with this one. I want the spell to be so much better. If it was a 30-foot range, if it had an attack roll or anything else, it might be one of the best damage-dealing cantrips in the game. But there's just too many limitations and too many things counting against it. I think it's a C.
I'm going to give it a C as well. Next up, we come to Prestidigitation. This is the bread and butter of any light conjurer or any wannabe wizard.
Conjurer of cheap tricks,
yes,
would you say?
This is the conjurer of cheap tricks. Prestidigitation has a pretty long list of applications. Essentially, you can do all sorts of things like create little tiny fires, not damaging fires, little fires. You can create sensory effects or little light shows or make something clean or make something dirty.
Or flavor your food?
That's the great application. Oh no, I have to eat this gruel. Well, now it tastes like delicious soup.
Ice cream.
Or ice cream. So there are a lot of fun role-play applications.
Ice cream that tastes like... Gruel that tastes like ice cream would have a weird mouthfeel.
It would.
Like I think that's the one thing, is that you can change the flavor of something, but I don't know about you, but like mouthfeel... The mouthfeel is still there.
Well, that's why I would make my gruel taste like a stew, a delicious stew.
Okay.
Because then you got to match the palate, the texture.
But how weird! Like I guess there are things that like taste like ice cream. You're like, oh, that tastes like ice cream, but like that doesn't feel like ice cream. It's weird. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Prestidigitation is the spell to make everything taste like ice cream. This is a tricky one because I actually think that it's a great pickup. But the applications are all somewhat niche. It's got a lot of niche applications, which actually makes it less niche because the answer to so many little things that might pop up is Prestidigitation.
Let's say this. It's S tier for role-playing. It's S tier in real life. It's probably a B tier in adventuring situations. In
adventuring situations, I do think that this is a B tier cantrip, but I can't argue against anybody who says that this is a must-have. That's the tricky part. It's like the applications are all very useless in most applications.
It's just too fun.
It's
like,
too fun.
I think the fun factor is an interesting thing. Like it's too enjoyable. I usually take it with characters that can get Prestidigitation, and I feel bad when I don't take it.
I don't have it, and I feel weird about it with my character, but I did take Mage Hand and Minor Illusion, and that is saying something, that those are better cantrips than Prestidigitation.
And that is the one thing, is that between Mage Hand and Minor Illusion, you feel like you've got a lot of the things. What you don't get is you don't get to flavor things, you don't get to clean things. And I think the cleaning things is a weird one. Like, that's the one I see all the time now. Is like I see like player characters get covered in mud, they are covered in blood and refuse and totally gross. The Adventurer's Shower.
It's so funny how often it comes up that it's like, oh, we just crawled out of the sewers and now we need to go talk to the king.
Yeah.
Well, Prestidigitation is going to fix all that. Now we smell like roses as we go to talk to some royalty. Yeah. It's weird how it comes up so often, and for that, I'm going to give it an A.
Now, technically, you can only clean an object with Prestidigitation. You can't clean a creature.
A lot of my friends use me as an object. So next up we have Primal Savagery. This is a cantrip that was introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. It is available for druids. It allows you to grow your fingernails or fangs and make a corrosive attack against a target within 5 feet of you. You make a melee spell attack, and immediately after making the attack, your fingernails or fangs retract back to normal. The imagery of this cantrip is pretty cool. And dealing acid damage, 1d10 acid damage, is pretty cool. But in essence, there's a lot of other options out there that are probably better than doing this. And that's kind of the tricky part, is druids also have shillelagh. They generally are carrying some form of a staff or weapon that could probably do the same. Really, the only thing that I'm thinking here that might be redeemable is if the target is resistant to other types of damage but not acid damage, then maybe.
But shillelagh creates a magical bludgeoning weapon that you can smash people in the face with.
Yeah.
And your other cantrips are going to deal damage as well. And most cantrips, you're not really worried about being disarmed, because most cantrips don't have a material requirement to them. They just have somatic or verbal. And so you don't need an object to channel the cantrip through to deal damage with it. I really don't know what this cantrip is supposed to be doing, because it really just is 1d10 acid damage as a melee attack. I feel like I'm missing something with it.
I give it a thumbs up for theme. And that's what this has going for it. But I don't even know if I would take it if it fit the theme of my character.
No, this is a D. Like, you can't combine it with other things either. Like, you read this cantrip and you think, oh, this is going to be a cantrip for a moon druid, or this is going to be a cantrip that I could combine with a monk or some sort of unarmed fighter. No. You just get to, as part of the cantrip, like, have the acid attack. You can't combine it with your weapons. You can't combine it with your natural weapons or your bites or anything like that. So it's a spell that you'd think, oh, there's creativity here, and there just isn't.
D tier. Next up we have Produce Flame. This cantrip is available for druids. It allows you to create a magical flame that doesn't harm you or your armor or anything you're wearing. You can use the flame to shed bright light in 10 feet, dim light for an additional 10 feet. And you can also hurl the flame at an enemy within 30 feet and deal 1d8 fire damage. That damage does escalate as you level up. So really this is kind of like the druid gets the light cantrip and the firebolt cantrip, but less range, not quite as good as either, but you do get both.
I mean, only druids get this spell. I think it's C even for them. Like, as a druid, to take this spell, you got to pass up Shillelagh, you got to pass up Thorn Whip, you got to pass up Druidcraft. You got to pass up a lot of spells before you get to this one. I just think with Produce Flame, it's just not good enough to make the cut in my books.
I want to give it a B. I'm going to be optimistic about it. I think that there is value in you kind of get the discount version of 2 cantrips for the cost of 1 cantrip, and that actually does have value. So I think that it is a B tier. I also think the Wildfire Druid loves this cantrip thematically. I know that I love thematic things, but if I was playing a Wildfire Druid, I'd probably take this cantrip as my go-to attack cantrip.
Next up, we come to one of the classics of D&D, Ray of Frost, available to sorcerers, wizards, and artificers, incidentally, which Ray of Frost, really simply put, you make an attack within a target against 60 feet of you, does D8 cold damage on a hit, reduces the target's speed by 10 feet. I love Ray of Frost as a little battlefield control spell because that speed reduction can pay dividends in so many ways. Whether you are trying to make it more difficult for an enemy to get out of an area that you've created with another spell, or you are trying to just make sure that they're not going to be able to use their movement to get up to attack you on their next turn, or you just want something that's reliable that does cold damage, Ray of Frost is your ticket. And I really like that it has that speed penalty with no saving throw attached to it. You hit someone, you're slowing them down. I don't think Ray of Frost is S tier by any stretch, but I think it is a solid A-.
I'm just going to give it an A. I think that Ray of Frost is one of the better attack cantrips. I love the cantrips that deal damage and do something extra. We talked about this with Chill Touch that had other things that it can do besides just dealing damage. What's great is that Ray of Frost happens every time. What's interesting is we gave Chill Touch S tier. I might actually want to give this S tier because, let's be real, Chill Touch we gave S tier because it deals damage and has another thing that it can do, but that other thing that it can do happens in specific situations. Ray of Frost affects everybody.
Yes, but it might not be the circumstances where that speed penalty matters.
Fair.
Sometimes it doesn't matter that you reduce the target's speed by 10 feet, and sometimes it makes all the difference in the world. I have cost enemies their turns because they were slowed down by 10 feet. I have seen enemies that were not able to get out of the damaging AoE that was going to kill them because their speed was reduced by 10 feet. So there are applications, but sometimes the enemy's already up in your grill and they're not going anywhere, you're not going anywhere, and that speed penalty doesn't matter.
Fine. I'll stick with A, but I do think that this is one of the best cantrips if you want to combine damage dealing and battlefield control.
Agreed. So finally, we come to Resistance. It is a 1-action casting time and a 1-minute concentration duration, but you touch a creature and they add 1d4 to the next saving throw that they make during the spell's duration, and then the spell ends. This is fine. You have to really be thinking in advance to get the most out of it, so it's a very difficult spell to use. But we have seen a new version of it in the 1D&D playtests that is a reaction speed version that doesn't require concentration anymore. That version is S tier.
This version is C?
Yeah.
It's not the worst spell, and there are niche cases where this is very useful. The ability to just have that at your disposal can be useful in niche situations, which is why it's not a D tier. I do think that there are several people who could take this and make use of it and it be a game changer for them.
It's just hard to plan when you're going to need to make a saving throw. And so a spell that you have to cast in advance, concentrate on it, and then only applies once, you don't really know whether or not that's going to matter or not. And so it's hard to use it in combat. You can kind of use it in scenarios where you know, hey, this lever is coated in poison. No one can disarm it. So I'm going to cast resistance on you so you can try to just resist the poison or something like that. Or you can use it when characters have to make ongoing saving throws against a disease or a persistent poison or some sort of other effect that they need to shake off. So in those cases where you know that it's coming, it's really, really useful to get that extra D4. But it's hard to use it in a situation where, now you need to make a saving throw against Fireball.
So that's a look at part 2 of our cantrip tier ranking. If you haven't checked out part 1, you can do so right up over there. And we will also be doing part 3, where we will finish off the list of all the cantrips available in D&D 5e. And at the end of that video, we will include the full lists of all of the cantrips that got S tier, all the cantrips that got A tier, so forth and so on. We'll have the complete lists up at the end of video number 3. If you have used any of these cantrips or have differing opinions on how well they work in your games, please let us know about it in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible because of the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the videos that we do here on YouTube, please consider becoming a patron of our show by following the links in the description below.
And if you want to see a bunch of spellcasters using cool cantrips, you can check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we got plenty more great guides on all the spells and tier rankings for D&D 5e. They're all right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.